Good afternoon, YouTube. So I'm continuing my coverage of the election since the mainstream media neglects their responsibility and doesn't cover it at all. This is the Republican chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel. She will shed light on the matters in the election in which she deemed illegal. Well, essentially, the entire coverage of what's been happening behind the scenes as the Trump campaign basically tries to win back America from the illegal activity that's happened by Democrats. Thank you for watching.
I'm going to start with some of the irregularities we've seen in the state of Michigan specifically, and then I'll go a little bit broader. But Michigan is my home state, and in the county, Wayne County, Republican poll watchers were denied their legal right to monitor the election and purposely kept in the dark, both literally and figuratively. Poll watchers or poll election workers locked windows and padlocked doors. Obviously, that's not going to instill confidence. There are thousands of reports of poll watchers being intimidated and unable to do their job. And as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, 131 affidavits have been completed just in Michigan, with over 2,800 incident reports that have been submitted to us since Election Day. 2 new lawsuits were filed today by people who were working in Detroit, and a whistleblower who has gotten their information. We have gotten their information to the Eastern District Court of Michigan. As you guys can understand, with 2,800 incident reports, this is a lot to track down. It means we're interviewing these people, we're getting their statements, and we're turning them into affidavits. But that takes a lot of time and effort. And as Matt has mentioned, there's a canvass process and a certification for a reason. But I will just tell you the distress that I'm hearing in my state from people who were at TCF and the way they were treated is deeply alarming. I hope you go and look at this. I hope you look at these affidavits, and I hope you hear from the people that were there who feel like they were denied transparency and saw wrongdoing in Detroit. We should all be alarmed by this, no matter where you are on the political spectrum. In addition to that, we've heard hundreds of instances of election workers who were verbally accosted. They verbally accosted our poll watchers and refusals to let them challenge questionable ballots. Election workers were wearing Biden t-shirts and applauding when our poll watchers were kicked out. Imagine volunteering and going and spending your night because you care so much about the integrity of the election, and then to be kicked out and to be cheered as you are leaving. This does not instill confidence in our democracy, and these are good people. I know most of these people. Of the few ballots that Democrat election workers did allow us to challenge, our observers say those ballots were then moved back into the regular pile after our poll watchers were intimidated and pushed from the process. There is a canvass for a reason. There is a certification process for a reason. And unlike Election Day, we need these processes to be transparent. Already in Detroit, we are hearing incidents, and we will have affidavits to this effect, of people not being able to meaningfully canvass and discrepancies that we're seeing in Detroit specifically. So just after a week after the polls closed, Democrats and the media want to ignore these clear irregularities and rush to call states as one and end the certification and canvass process. We're hearing we need to unite, we need to come together. Well, for the thousands of people who spent time and hours going out to be part of this process, who feel disenfranchised, who don't feel like there was transparency, we can't do that unless we search out all these irregularities. Even one instance of voter fraud should be too many for all of us. We intend to ensure that every lawful voter has their vote counted in accordance with the law, that observers are granted the access they are due under state law, and that any irregularities that have occurred, whether by malicious intent or incompetence, are investigated to the fullest extent allowed under the law. We will not give up on this process until every last issue has been uncovered. The RNC has deployed legal teams in multiple states to investigate clear irregularities with voting, counting, and tabulation, and we will work with state and local authorities to ensure that a legal count is conducted in accordance to each state's laws and that every vote is counted. If the shoe were on the other foot, if it were this close the other way, if President Trump was in the lead in all these states, and the media would be screaming, this isn't over, the race isn't over, we need more time to count and make sure it's right. But because it's Biden and a very slight lead, the media demands the race is over and there's nothing to see here. The American people need to have confidence in their elections. There are over 150 Americans who voted in this election, and they deserve to know that their votes were counted accurately. Right now, and I can say this as I'm hearing calls and hearing from people across the country, they do not have confidence that that happened. So I am asking the media, interview these people, talk to these people. Do not just dismiss these allegations out of hand, these irregularities. Go research it, because this is a problem when people are not being able to transparently watch the election counting, which they are legally allowed to do. It creates division in our country. Republican and Democrat should be allowed to observe this process. But in this case, it's Republicans that were not allowed to. We will continue to fight. President Trump will continue to fight for us, and we'll continue to fight for him. Please go to visit.gop. Please visit gop.com to donate. And if you see signs of voter irregularity, go to 888-503-3526. Thank you.
Okay, so before we continue, there was one other gentleman that spoke, and then Kaylee, of course, the spokeswoman for the White House. But before we continue that, I just want to say, I feel deeply empathetic for the people whom were volunteering for the election and then whom were, I guess you could say, intimidated off the premises. She said that there were physical barriers like covers for the windows, locks for the doors, that Biden people were behind it. So all I can say is from the overwhelming amount of evidence, and it seems that the Democrats didn't even care to be caught this time, that hopefully the Supreme Court will rule in favor that the election was definitely tampered with and many votes were compromised, ballots were compromised, and will either be rejected or revote. Thank you. I won't interfere. Let this guy talk.
Thank you, Kaylee. As Kaylee stated, the election is not over. Tabulation and canvassing continues across the United States. And today in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, Donald J. Trump for president and 2 representative voters filed suit against the Secretary of State in select counties, alleging 2 things. Number 1, a violation of equal access based on a lack of meaningful observation and transparency, particularly in Democrat-controlled counties. And secondly, a violation of equal protection based on disparate treatment between Republican voters and Democrat voters. But what does this mean in layman's terms? What does this mean for all of you? What this means is if you are a Democrat in Philadelphia, you are allowed to work outside the bounds of the restrictions on fixing defective ballots, sometimes referred to as curing. But if you're in Republican counties in the state of Pennsylvania, you are not allowed to do that because they're strictly following the text of the statute in Pennsylvania. Secondly, if you are a Republican in the city of Philadelphia, for example, you are not allowed meaningful access to the observation of the vote tabulation process. If you're a Democrat in a Republican-leaning county in the state of Pennsylvania, you were allowed that access to meaningfully view the ballots as they're being counted. There are, in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties, there were over 682,000 ballots that were tabulated outside the view of our observers who are entitled by law to review those ballots. And we believe that a meaningful review of those ballots could discern that there were ballots that were illegally counted. Our relief that we're seeking at this point is to enjoin the Secretary of State from hurrying to certify the results before they were completely tabulated or canvassed so that we can obtain that meaningful review and discern within those 682,000 ballots at least, and there may be more throughout the state, whether or not there is disparate treatment for Republican voters and Democrat voters in the states, and whether Democrat voters were disproportionately allowed to cure or fix their ballots in some locations in the state and not others. And for example, even at a minute level here today, we are very close to the automatic recount statute in Pennsylvania, and this lawsuit itself could change that or swing that small discrepancy. So this is the relief we're seeking at this time, but I would also urge the press and those out there that this is step 1 of a process. We are within our rights to look into these irregularities. We were in our rights to observe the votes as they are being tabulated. We will observe those, and we believe that this lawsuit takes us one step closer to closing the gap in the vote differential in Pennsylvania. And at this time, I'll turn over to the Republican chairwoman speaking.
Okay, so as I understand it there, what he said, the first violation of equal access, what the Democrats have done is that they have prevented a bipartisan cooperation in the check and balance of the vote count. So as Giuliani was explaining the other day in my other video, it requires 3 people for the ballot counting, you could say. 1 Republican representative, 1 Democrat representative, and 1 election official. And each of them will look at the ballot and discern whether or not it's a legitimate ballot and put it in the count. So that was prevented. So what he explained was that Democrats were allowed to cure or fix ballots, which means that if they find a discrepancy, like they want to change a ballot from a Republican to a Democrat, or they want to disregard a Republican vote, they're permitted to do that under the statutes that they were allowed to operate in. And they were operating outside the bounds of the law. And then the second one, I think, was equal protection. Yeah, pardon me, equal access. So that was the inability of Republicans to properly observe the ballot count, let's say, as I see it, or they might be reversed, but pardon me if that's the truth. So those 2 violations, if a recount was to occur in Pennsylvania, that would be the best thing possible. However, I would ask for a revote with the proper constraints in place, because a recount, maybe it will tell us a lot, but I think that the Democrats were burying votes from the very beginning, and they fully intended and structured this to the best of their influence and control, structured ballot counting to favor Biden right from the get-go. And in spite of this, Trump was still ahead in Pennsylvania before the end of the vote. So, the discrepancies that they're explaining here, it's a little bit, it's very disturbing. It's almost like mafia style or even dictator style elections where, they force the public, but in this instance, they didn't really force the public. What they did is they waited and then they forced the ballot counters and, people who have volunteered their time to take part in helping the election infrastructure, and essentially Democrat representatives intimidated Republican representatives into getting out, like get out, or they weren't permitted access in. So, it stinks to high hell of corruption. And I'm hoping that when this thing gets to the Supreme Court, the sooner the better, because, as the gentleman says, there's a time constraint. They're trying to push this election as approved and Biden to be president-elect as fast as possible, even though the vote is not yet, in my estimation, legitimized and accurate. So all I'm saying is that we will watch very carefully and see what the developments come out. We obviously know that Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, these are hot spots for this kind of thing. I've even heard of things going on in Texas, and I mean, this is far from over. There will be more states that will be under investigation before long. I'm not saying this because I support Trump. I do support Trump, and I think he's the best thing that ever happened to America since Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln. He will be in the same caliber if history is accurate. But I want to say this. Trump opened a big fight when he won the last election, a big fight. And I think that criminals like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Adam Schiff, they're deadly afraid of Trump. They're deadly afraid of what that man can achieve, what his team achieves, and what they're doing to strengthen America. And they don't want to see America strong. They want to see America weak. And so those criminals would be, if I was president, they would be tried and put behind bars for a long time. I wouldn't be, the one point I disagree with the Republicans, they lack teeth. They lack the backbone to really punish and go after these criminals hard and make an example of them. Because the fact that the law exists is inconsequential to the Democratic Party as I see it. And what that means is that they're not afraid to stand outside the law. And that's wrong. Nobody is above the law. Nobody can operate outside the bounds of the law. They only think they can because at the moment they found several loopholes in which they can exploit. But the fact of the matter is, if Trump can restore order to the House, then he needs to take a good, long, hard look at the Constitution and figure out how to punish these people, because they need to be made an example of. This free elections in the U.S., the fact that it's even in doubt that it would be Trump as a victor, proves to me that the concept of free elections is disappearing. Like the fact that they could shut down the counting and whatnot and do all this shady garbage behind the scenes, that's indicative to me there's something really bad going on here. And I mean, Trump, you hate him or like him, I call him a patriot because I think that he really, really believes in strengthening America and American, the greatness of the U.S., you could say. This is what Trump wants. You cannot be permitted to knock a guy out like that with cheating nonsense and obvious forgery of ballots. And I mean, the Democrats have been doing this a long time. They have cheated in previous elections and whatnot. Everybody knows that. However, the reason that this is different is because if this election is ruled in favor of Biden, then the public can no longer have confidence that there's free elections in the U.S. That's the truth. Because there's no way by popular vote that guy could ever win. And I know that in my heart because I know the kind of person that guy is. Anybody that voted for him is either blind or they're ignorant. There's no other way. You look at how Joe Biden conducts himself in his history and you give it a real good, long, hard look, you can see that he's been based in criminal activity ever since he's been in office. It's a joke. It's nothing. He's a person without integrity. Everything that the media has been accusing Trump of, he himself committed. The Russian hoax, the scandals, Ukraine, Burisma, like everything they accuse Trump of, Joe Biden himself has done. And he's a criminal. And the fact that he could get away with it, that cannot be permitted. Barack Obama, all the crimes that he committed as president, the deliberate weakening of America, put Americans in massive debt, weaken our military abroad, weaken our country, divide our country from within, separate us into our different tribes and groups, talk about intersectionality to create more division in the House. And look at us now. The Black Lives Matter, everything to do with that. The underground, they're Marxists, and they're based in Marxism. And we cannot have that kind of thing going on in the U.S. A free democracy has nothing to do with communism. Nothing. Only from within that you invite worms into the household. Adam Schiff and also Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Obama, those guys should go to prison forever. Even after they're dead, they should still be in prison, 300 years in prison, because that's the appropriate punishment for treason. So if the America wants to be great and continue to be great, then there needs to be the proper punishment levied against these people to make an example of those people, so that others that look at them will say, take a second look, oh, maybe we don't want to go to prison forever. I'm saying with confidence, I believe in Trump. I know Trump ran a legitimate campaign. There's no such need for cheating, because you don't have to cheat as a winner. You have to cheat if you're a loser. And Biden is a loser. Absolutely. I can see it on the guy. You only have to spend a few minutes looking at him, how he conducts himself, how he talks. This guy is not to be trusted. And Kamala Harris neither. These people are the exact opposite, the cringeworthy people that make you afraid to think of those people in government. Oh my God, it should scare the crap out of you. Pardon my language. It should scare you that those people could be in power. Imagine the havoc, the damage that they would wreak upon America. We've already lived through Barack Obama, in which Biden is the vice president. So we know exactly what kind of America they want to build. We know it perfectly. They want to build a pro-leftist, radical leftist America that's weak and turns globalist rapidly, with massive debt and massive unemployment and expensive health care priced out of proportion. And our enemies abroad, they roam freely with nuclear weapons, and they go about their business, and China expansionism and conquering of the market of the US and stealing jobs. Like, I can go on for days what they did, because I don't forget what Barack Obama did. I don't forget the crimes of the Democratic Party. I don't forget. I remember exactly how it was. And I remember thousands of people in line with food stamps and trying to make ends meet with no job and no money and no hope. You remember America before Trump took over. I do. So I hope that the Supreme Court does the just thing and rules in favor of a recount or a revote, because this is ludicrous and this is illegal. It should never be permitted. Thank you for watching.